Food. So I'm going to try and link the two together, submitting to the divine will, and how Ramadan is linked to that, and how Ramadan is relevant in our time today, and what we can glean from it. I want to start off by saying that the idea of the divine will, the truth of the divine will, submitting to the divine will, is something of a thesis worth of discussion. However, to keep it simple, how do we know what the divine will is? And then how do we submit? So there's two things. Firstly, knowing the divine will, we can only know that from God himself. Yep. And we know what comes from God from his scripture. So divine scripture tells us what is the divine will, what he requires of us, what he wants of us. And number two is the people he sends to submit to his divine will, to show us how to submit to his divine will. So not only do we learn how to do it, we also see the impact of it. So there's people who have come with the scripture, and there are people who have come to show us how to submit to God. God sends saints, God sends prophets, God sends divine agents, people of spiritual merit, however you want to refer to them, but he sends people to show us how. And the most important thing is the impact thereafter. So scripture speaks on its own. Today I'm going to speak to you about how people have come to show us. And the example that I would like to share with you is that of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Prophet Muhammad, just a quick overview of his life. He was born in a time in Arabia which was more or less lawless. There was no laws as such. They had codes. It was tribal. They had codes, but they didn't have a law. There was no king. There was no emperor. There was no overall governance. It was just ruled by tribes, and tribes looted one another, and they lived for the day. They lived for the moment, and that's it. And Prophet Muhammad came in a time which was very much harsh. So people, through their tribal ways, had developed attitudes towards women, towards slaves, towards people who they thought were lower. They had this idea of people being lower. They had this idea of women being lower. They had this idea of taking advantage of people and not having any kind of retribution as a result of it. So they had this idea within their minds that if we are powerful in terms of our wealth, then we can really do anything we want. We can do anything we want. If we had wealth, then we could rip people off. If we had wealth, or we had stature, we had power, whatever that was in that time, then we can do anything we want to whoever we want, however we want. And they did. And the beautiful city of Makkah as we know it today, once upon a time was an economic trade route. People used to come to Makkah. Why? Because there used to be pilgrimage that used to take place all around the world. Even before there was Islam there was pilgrimage that took place there. People went there. They had economic fairs. People traded. But when people came for the pilgrimage and for their rights, the tribes of that region knew that these people are coming, and they're coming with money. So they used to hike up the prices. They used to do all this evil stuff. They used to take their money. The people who were poor, they used to say to them, "You're not praying enough. You need to give more sacrifice, give more gold, give more wealth." And they used to live, and they used to just take their money. They were happy doing this. Why? Because the idea of no retribution, that there's no concept of God. Yeah, that God was just an idea, but he wasn't like real. When Prophet Muhammad came, he didn't like all this. I'll tell you a little bit more about him now, and I've given you a bit about the background and the context that we grew up in. Prophet Muhammad was born to a tribe called the Quraysh, which was a prominent tribe. It was they were in positions of power. However, when he was born, as the Arab custom would go, they would send their children out to the suburban kind of areas, and where the air was cleaner. They would go there to learn language, because language is purer. As the cases over here in the cities, compared to the more suburban areas, we find that the language is purer there, the air is cleaner. Same thing. So they used to go out there. Prophet Muhammad spent 4 years there. Then he came back to his mother at the age of 4. He spent 2 years with his mother, and his mother passed away at the age of 6. So he lost his mother at the age of 6 years old. His father had already passed away before he was born, so he was an orphan. And then he lost his mother at the age of 6 years old. So now his primary caregiver was his grandfather. Now his grandfather was very fond of him, took care of him, but however when he was 8, his grandfather passed away too. So his uncle took care of him. His uncle took care of him and he raised him. Now, regardless of how close the uncle may be, he's no father, he's no mother, he never will be a mother or a father to this person. Nonetheless, Abu Talib, who was his uncle, took care of him to the best he could. He raised him well, he gave him a job, he told him to herd the sheep, and later taught him how to trade. So Prophet Muhammad was actually a businessman. He learned how to trade. And he traded fairly, unlike the people within his context. So he became known amongst people. Muhammad is someone who you can trust. So they used to trust their belongings with him. They never used to have banks, so they used to trust belongings with people, and he was amongst the people that they would trust their belongings to, and they would trade with him, and he would make much profits in his trade, but he would use his profits to benefit others within society. Now, when he came to the age of 40, he had already got married, he had some children, and now he wanted to turn to God. So he turned to God, and he didn't like what was going on in his city, and he would contemplate and reflect as to why is this going on. At the age of 40, an angel came to him, Angel Gabriel in the English tradition, rather in the Christian tradition, and said to him, read. It's very important, read, because it's about learning. It's about learning. Our experience that we have, the experiences that we have of learning, is who we are as human beings. We learn, we develop, we progress through knowing, through learning, through knowledge. And that is the height of spiritual experience. Other than that, whatever we see is material. And that is relevant to the context of Prophet Muhammad, and I'll link that to our context now too, in a moment. So, read. And he told him to read, and revelation came. So this was the beginning of revelation. Now when revelation came, this was obviously the divine will, what God wanted, and the Quran was revealed over a period of 23 years, so little bits came over a period of 23 years. Now, the Prophet Muhammad, as a result of coming with truth, because this is the truth coming directly from God, divine truth, people didn't like what they heard. Being fair, treat people right, don't cheat people, don't treat people like as if they're lower than you, everyone is equal before God. They didn't like this. Why? Because the tribal system likes superiority. They're like, we have superiority over those guys, these guys are slaves, we don't have to treat them right, these are women, we don't have to treat them the same. Prophet Muhammad was no. So the message has come from God, and our own beings, the spiritual experiences tells us that this is wrong. And when Prophet Muhammad came with this message, people went against him. His own tribe, his own family went against him. And he came to a point where the people who followed him were persecuted, to the point where some of them were even killed. Yet he did not fight. He did not fight. And this is something that is very unknown amongst people. People look at Islam and what they see on media, on the TV and so on and so forth. They think Islam it's a religion of fighting. It's a religion of war. It's a religion of conquering and conquest. No. 13 years the Prophet was in Mecca. He did not lift a finger. They beat him. They beat him black and blue. They beat him and his friends. They killed some of his friends. The last thing that they wanted to do before he left after 13 years of persecution was that they actually had a plot to kill him. And they had the best idea that they could find in terms of killing him and getting away with it. They got a person from every single tribe to come together, young person from every single tribe, to pounce on him when he comes out of his house to take him out. They weren't successful because the reason is if all of them come together, no one can have the blame. Who is there to take the blame? Yeah? Anyway, Prophet Muhammad, he was saved by God through a miracle. He came out of his home, nobody saw him, and he went to Medina, and he was received well in Medina, and the people followed him in Medina. But for 13 years, he did not lift a finger. Pacifism. He did not lift a finger. Coming back to Makkah now, 10 years after that, after leaving his city, imagine us we start talking truth, our family goes against us, our friends go against us, the people that we traded with go against us, the people that we knew, our neighbors, go against us, and they try to kill us, and then we have to leave. It's not too different from what's going on in Syria. So many people having to flee, coming over here. So Prophet Muhammad went as a refugee to Medina. 10 years later, lots happens, but the sum of it is that the Prophet Muhammad and his small band of believers, they made a pact with the Quraysh, with the people of Makkah. And he says that we'll have peace. Let's have peace. And that was the treaty. That was the terms of the treaty. We have peace. Yeah. If any one of us breaks this treaty, then there will be war. And what happens? The Makkans, one of the alliances with the Makkans, they go and kill a tribe that was allianced with the Muslims. And this broke the treaty. So now Prophet Muhammad marched with 124,000 men towards Makkah, from Medina to Makkah. Now think about this. Just think about this. What would your desires tell you at this point in time? You are the person who grew up as an orphan. You lost your mum at the age of 6, lost your grandfather at the age of 8. You had to be raised by an uncle. You had to fend for your own self all the way through your whole life. You get kicked out of your own city for speaking truth. You get almost killed. Your friends have been killed. You've seen some of your family members be mutilated. Now you have this same group of people, this whole city at your feet. What are you tempted to do? What are you tempted to do? As human beings, we are tempted to take revenge. I want revenge for every single person, and every single person that has been. What did Prophet Muhammad do? He forgave every single person in that city. He had them at his mercy. He could have done anything he wanted to do. And as was the Arab custom, as was the custom of the Persian Empire, as was the custom of the Roman Empire, as was the custom that later came from the Mongols and the Mughals and others, was that you came to a city and you had the opportunity to obliterate them. You took it and you did it to show everybody else who you are. Prophet Muhammad did not do this. He came to the city, he forgave every single person, including there was this one woman who mutilated the body and the corpse of his uncle. She ripped his body open when he died. She ripped his body open, ripped out his organs. Very sickening. Prophet Muhammad, and that's very difficult to do. Forgave her as well. Forgave everybody. Forgiveness. Why have I told you this story? I've told you this story because what we see in the life of the Prophet Muhammad is patience, forbearance, discipline, gratitude, mercy, compassion, non-violent resistance. We see all of these beautiful qualities that go against sometimes our nature. This reminds me of a Cherokee saying, which is very common amongst many different traditions, but I love the way this has been put. A grandfather, an old man, spoke to his grandchild. He said to him, "O son, O grandchild, in us there are two wolves. One wolf is defined by hatred, malice, jealousy, pride, ego, rancor. And there's another wolf within you that is the good wolf that has happiness, truth, love, compassion, forbearance, patience. There are two wolves within you." And then the grandson, he says, "Oh grandfather, which one wins? Which of the two wolves wins?" He says, "The one that you feed." The one that you feed. Within us, we'll find that there is this desire to do bad, this desire to be good. When we feed the good becomes strong, and we become that person. When we feed the bad, that becomes who we are. So what we learn from the story of the Prophet Muhammad is how Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, submitted to the divine will and had these qualities within him that made him the most successful amongst leaders. Till today, there's people commentating on his leadership, and not necessarily Muslim. I just came across a book recently by an author called John Adair, and he's the leading scholar in America on leadership studies. And he wrote a whole book on the leadership of Muhammad, and he gleaned all of these qualities from him. And from reading this book, my reflections was that these weren't just leadership qualities for the sake of it. These were spiritual, This was spiritual conditioning from God that made him his leader. That made him his leader. Now, coming to Ramadan. What's Ramadan got to do with all of that then? Let me tell you about the day in Ramadan of a Muslim, especially now. When I was younger, it was a lot more easier. When I was back at school, I wake up in the morning because sunset was early, sunset was early, and sunrise was really early too. So I would wake up 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, make my fast, and come back after school, 3 o'clock, make my fast. Now it's 20-hour fasts. We make our fast at 1:15 in the morning, and we break our fast. Well, today is at 9:32 or something, 9:33. I know it to the minute now, but the last one today is 9:33-ish. So near enough 20-hour fasts. But let me tell you, it's not just about staying hungry. Those people who just stay hungry, they've gained nothing from Ramadan. And I'll come back to this. Although you may think, 20-hour fast, they've gained something from it. They may have lost a little bit of weight. I have lost a belt size, which I'm quite proud of. But after marriage, I put on so much weight. But yeah. So anyway, coming back to the point. People stay hungry. But gaining just hunger, what's the point of this? And I spoke about this back in 2015 when I came. What is the point of fasting? The point of fasting is that we come to know God. And the way we come to know God is disciplining ourselves for a purpose, not just staying hungry for the sake of being hungry, or staying away from water just for the sake of staying away from water. But in addition to Ramadan, from the moment we wake up to the moment we sleep to the next day, we are fasting with our tongues, we are not fasting with our minds, we are fasting with our hearts. In addition to Ramadan, one of the most virtuous things that we do is we also give charity during this month. There's a pillar of Islam called zakat, which is something that people like to give during Ramadan. You can give any time of the year, but Ramadan is the marker when most people give their zakat. In fact, if you look at statistics of amount of charity given in Ramadan, it's phenomenal. So many millions of pounds have been given in charity just in Ramadan. So we make sure we fast with our tongue, in a sense that we watch what we say, to who we say, so we don't hurt people. We fast with our hands, with our bodies, so we don't hurt anybody, and we stay hungry from that. We fast with our minds, that we keep our minds pure. We don't think about evil. When we have hatred or jealousy or rancor or malice or jealousy or whatever it is, or envy of a person, we have to actively take that out of our minds. There's a specific saying that God forgives everything except a person who holds these evil qualities within them. For another person, forgive. Why forgiveness in itself? One of the names of God is the forgiver. But why is that so great? We're forgiving too. Does not make us God. No, it doesn't. But it makes us godly. Do you see? Lowercase g. Yeah, it makes us godly. To have a virtue that God has himself makes us godly. So God is asking us to become that. So during the day in Ramadan, whilst we're fasting with our hearts, our minds, our bodies, our souls. And we keep away from all of these things. As a result, coming back to the story of Muhammad and linking these together, we become compassionate because we're now thinking about people who don't have food or drink. I know at 9:33 I'm going to get my drink, I'm going to get my food, but there's people who are not. They have to fast whether they like it or not. They won't get food. And this human catastrophe is going around the world right now. Yemen is the biggest crisis right now in the world. Not Syria, not Burma, Yemen. It's not in the news. Yemen is the biggest crisis right now. There's people who are dying of malnourishment. There's no food. They can't get any food inside Yemen. I know I'm going to get my food. So it brings compassion within me. The actual value of being forgiving, the fact that I know that there's someone who's done me wrong, but for the sake of God, because God has told me to, submitting to the divine will of God, I become forgiving. As a result, we develop peace within our lives. Having said all this, Islamic, the word in itself, means submitting to the divine will to find peace. Submitting to the divine will to find peace, and that is the very meaning of Islam. The word itself. And it's important to understand this. One of the first things that we learn on our journey of sacred knowledge, yes, we start the Quran with Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. I begin in the name of God, the compassionate, the merciful. But in addition to that, we start with the words of the Prophet Muhammad. The first lesson that every scholar, every Abadian scholar, every student teacher, every student is given is the words of the Prophet, Ar-Rahimuna yarhamur Rahman, yarhamu man fil ard, yarhamu man fis sama. The Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings upon him, said, have mercy upon those, the most merciful has mercy upon those who have mercy on those on earth. And those who have mercy upon the people on earth, the one in the heavens will have mercy upon you. Mercy is a message that we start with, and that should be at the very core of everything that we do. And that is essentially submitting to the divine will. So when we come to the divine will, yes, there are many things that God asks of us, but the first step in the direction of the divine will is compassion and mercy. And I'll end there. I'd like to say again, thank you very much for having me. There's a saying of the Prophet Muhammad, you have not truly thanked God until you have thanked the people. So I thank all of you, truly from the depth of my heart, for giving me this opportunity to come over here to speak to you and share some reflections with you of Ramadan. I'm happy to open the floor if there's any questions that people may have. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Can I ask, in the Quran, you said that there were messages that came at periods of time. Was that through meditation, or was it through just writing and the words came?
With Prophet Muhammad, different prophets have come in different times, and they've received inspiration in different ways according to the Islamic tradition. With Prophet Muhammad, he always received it through the angel Gabriel, and it was received directly through angel Gabriel, and he would receive it from him. So it wouldn't be a case that he would be meditating. He could come anytime, and he would receive it in that way. And it could be in public, it could have been in private. Even when he was with his family, they would notice when he would be receiving divine inspiration, because they would see it like there would be sweat on his forehead, and in these kind of forms, his body would become heavy, he would go really white, and then he would say these words. And the words of the Quran is very interesting. The words of the Quran in comparison to the actual words of the Prophet. You see, within the Islamic tradition, every word of the Prophet Muhammad has been preserved. Every single word. Everything that Prophet Muhammad has said, we have those words. And everything that God has said is in the Quran. So we have these two. There's people who have compared the two languages, and they are absolutely dissimilar. So the way Prophet Muhammad spoke when he was saying this is what God has said, is the Quran. You can see the language is totally different in comparison to the language that we've preserved of his sayings, which he specifically says, these are my sayings. Hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, different or similar?
Absolutely different.
Oh, different, yeah.
Absolutely different. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you to Brother Yasin for taking his time out. Just for a round of applause for his appreciation. And we touch upon just simple reminders of forgiveness, mercy, and he even touched upon Satya Dharma, Shanti Prema, the 5 human values, as our Bhagwan, our teacher, has taught us. So thank you, Yasin, for giving us that reminder, and we do hope you can come once again to share that insight. Thank you very much. So now we'll just have multi-faith prayers, bhajans, and we'll finish off with Father's Day message and announcements. So.